Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Allie Ingersoll. It's March Madness, and anything can happen. Both NC State's men's and women's teams are in the Final Four. Only 11 other schools have had both teams go this deep into the tournament the same year. We'll talk about the fan excitement level in just a little bit, but first, let's talk about the teams and the tournament themselves. WRAL sports journalist Luis Fernandez is here to talk about that. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So let's start with how unprecedented this is. Only the 14th time the same school has had both teams advance to this. So I guess just chat about that.
Well, first off, both of them were kind of going in the wrong direction at the end of the regular season. So it's surprising that they get here in a sense. But it's also so interesting because the men's team, was just barely getting in, while the women's team, they were a 3 seed overall. They are in the 3 seed in the tournament. They hosted a site, so they were a good team. They were one of these teams that you looked at and were like, hey, they could do something. They could make a run here. And they've looked. Both teams really have looked so good in the postseason.
Oh, definitely. So when we talk about basketball around the triangle, we often talk about the two blue teams. How did NC State enter this conversation? And historically, they're really not that bad, right? But
yeah,
it's in March, especially the last few years, it's Duke and UNC.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, what's so interesting with NC State, right, is they are a historical ACC program. They have so much of the history that revolves around the ACC, whether it be Everett Case, David Thompson, Jim Valvano, all these different people. And when you look at really overall success, right? Let's just use the ACC tournament, as championship as an example here. Mm-hmm. Duke has won the most with 22. UNC is second most with 18. And with their win this year, NC State is third most with 11. And fourth is Wake Forest with 4. So you've got the big 4 with those 4 teams. You got the Tobacco Road team. So it really is less of, okay, how did NC State get here? And it's more, where has NC State been? And having this opportunity to step into the national spotlight, I mean, it's huge for NC State. I'd argue it's very good for the ACC and for triangle sports in general. So it's exciting for sure. Oh,
it's definitely exciting. And they got hot at the right time. The men did, right? They won 9 games in a row at this point. So let's rewind just a little bit. What was it like going into the ACC tournament for them? And how have they turned that around?
Bad, I think, is to describe it in one word. They had lost 4 games in a row. They really weren't even, we talk about with the bubble, right, and how close you are to the bubble in the NCAA tournament, especially leading up and the bracketology of all of it. And they weren't even close to the bubble. They were not on the outside of the bubble. They were off in another kind of bubble atmosphere. And then in Louisville, the very first game of the ACC tournament, they play Louisville. They don't have one of their star players in DJ Horn, and they just barely survive. They get past it. But since that point, the way their defense has been playing has been tremendous. They went from allowing about, well over 100 points per every 100 possessions to, it's only happened twice now during this tournament run. They have been getting contributions from the players you'd expect. DJ Horn and DJ Burns, the two DJs, if you will. But they've also been getting a lot of really big contributions from the role players. In the very first game in the NCAA tournament, you've got Ben Middlebrooks, who had 20-some-odd points for them. Michael O'Connell hit the 3 against Virginia to send that into overtime. Mo Diarra has just been this amazing story with the way he's been observing Ramadan and been able to fast and go ahead and get through and still contribute the way he has, putting up, I think against Marquette, he had 16-some rebounds. It was wild. Casey Morsell, the veteran leader. There have just been so many really smaller pieces in the regular season that have stepped up and made a name for themselves in the postseason. And that's what you see during this time. You have stars and you have role players. And when they coalesce and come together, that's when you get special runs like this.
And they really are coming all together. Even during Sunday night's game against Duke, heading into the half, it was kind of like, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? And that second half was just really magical to watch.
And that's what's so interesting is the word Cinderella is thrown out so often. But this NC State team has not played like a Cinderella. When you compare, let's say 1983, for example, in the Cardiac Pack run, there were so many close games in that stretch. NC State, against, if we just look at the NCAA tournament, they dominated against Texas Tech. They went to overtime against Oakland, who was another one of those hot Cinderella teams. They dominated against Marquette. In that second half, they pulled away from Duke. This is a team that has been playing well above people's expectations, and it is just so fascinating to see. It's something that can only happen in March.
So we'll eliminate Cinderella then. We'll call them an underdog. Is that
sure? There you go.
So what's happening right now? An underdog story. And everyone really loves that, I think. What's even better for us here in Raleigh is that it's happening right in our own backyard. So even after winning the ACC tournament, were they a true contender heading into the NCAA?
No. Like, again, like it's so interesting because I feel like every year you always try and find those kind of, when you're filling out your bracket and things like that, you're always trying to find those kind of, Power 6 programs that struggle but might be getting hot at the right time. And that's really what NC State is. The confidence they've been playing with has been wild to see. I think most people thought they could maybe make some type of run, but I mean, Texas Tech even was a 6 seed, and a lot of people expected Texas Tech to make some kind of run as well. So, I think it was Kevin Keatts who said after the game against Duke in his press conference, he just essentially said, look, like at some point when you win so many games in a row, you expect to win. And so that confidence, I think, has been huge. Momentum is something that is unquantifiable in sports, but it's there. And so they have the momentum on their side for sure.
An 11 seed really going this far is very rare.
Absolutely. I mean, it's only happened 6 times in the history of the NCAA tournament that an 11 seed has gone to the Final Four. Most recently, UCLA in 2021, who, UCLA has a power program, so that's stands out a little bit less. But then you've got like Loyola Chicago in 2018. VCU in 2011, George Mason in 2006, LSU in 1986. So these runs are rare, but when they happen, they capture your attention. You become the main character of March Madness.
Let's shift now to the women. A 3 seed, as we talked about, so a little more likely to maybe head this far. They just beat a 1 seed, though. So as we said, though, is it really that surprising that they're heading to this level of the tournament?
So I think no, not really, because they were in a similar situation to the men's team where they struggled a little bit down the stretch, but they made a deep run in the ACC tournament. They lost to Notre Dame, who would ultimately be a 2 seed in the tournament. In the final of the ACC championship game. But this is an NC State team that under head coach Wes Moore has continuously competed in the NCAA tournament. Just a few years back, they lost to, I believe it was UConn in the Elite Eight in a double overtime game. That was heartbreaking for them. And this team is almost like brand new from that moment, but they have some star players. They've had, Isaiah James. They've got River Baldwin. They've got Sanaya Rivers. They've got all of these different players that are all incredibly talented, and they're starting to come together. I think more than anything, what's surprising is so often in the women's NCAA tournament, we think more of chalk, where it's those top seeds tend to do well and continue to move forward. So in this run, they have beaten 2 seed Stanford, who had a star player who's going to be a top 3 WNBA draft pick in Cameron Brink, and then they also beat number 1 seed Texas. And so it's the only surprising thing, I guess, is that they are upsetting those top 2, number 1, number 2 type seeds in their region. But this team is for real. It is legit. Huge challenge for them when they play undefeated South Carolina in the Final Four.
Yeah, definitely that state line rivalry as well. So what's your favorite part about watching the women's team?
Oh, gosh. I think so. My 2 favorite players in the triangle to watch this season have been, I'm going to put RJ Davis aside. He was the ACC Player of the Year. He's the easy answer. But Jared McCain on the men's side and Sanaya Rivers on the women's side. I love Sanaya Rivers' game. She really focuses on mid-range jumpers. She's kind of like this kind of throwback player, great on defense. But really what's been so much fun to watch in this tournament run for NC State has been Isaiah James. She has been absolutely on fire. She, I think it was 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 from 3. She's been averaging over 20 points a game in all of the NCAA tournament games this year. It's just been so wild to see her continued rise to stardom. This NC State women's team is really fun, and this ride for them has been incredible. And I'm curious to see how Friday goes against South Carolina.
Yeah, we'll definitely be watching on Friday and Saturday as both of them head there. Thanks, Lewis, for joining me. After this break, we will talk with Eric Miller about the Pac Pandemonium. Welcome back. You just heard some of the chaos from the Bell Tower Sunday night after fans flooded Hillsborough to celebrate both teams heading to the Final Four. Eric Miller has been talking with students and Pac backers. He's our guest now. So, Eric, I think really the only and the best way to describe this is madness. So what is the feeling around campus?
Yeah, Ali, we've definitely gotten a lot of different kinds of madness in the 24 hours after this game ended. You think about those fans out there you just heard who rushed the bell tower after the game was over, just absolutely losing their minds. Monday, the day after, very different kind of madness, almost a surreal feeling for so many of the people who were on this campus today. I'm calling you from right outside Reynolds Coliseum here. I can see the Jimmy Valvano statue just a few feet away. ESPN is setting up for live shots here. We've seen so many people walking around in T-shirts saying, "Why not us?" loud and proud with that NC State gear. You can't miss it today.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the campus really is feeling quite electric. That's how Hillsborough really felt all weekend. Horns honking from all over, some fireworks. What exactly are you hearing from the fans? Are they prepared, and were they prepared for this type of run?
No, I don't think anybody was prepared for this type of run. I mean, even for people who have followed this team for decades, who obsessively watched games during the regular season this year, this just isn't something that they expected. And I think you look at the team's record coming out of the end of the regular season. They lost 7 of their last 9 games. It wasn't a place that any of these teams, any of these fans expected they would be at this point. And the fact that they do get to be here, they're kind of walking on air. We caught up with one family, literally 3 generations of Wolfpack fans. The dad had gone here just after that 1983 run. At the time, he said it really still felt like something that would be possible again, but he didn't think he'd have to wait 40 years for it. And at this point, it was honestly something that he'd kind of given up on seeing. He told us he didn't think he was ever going to see this again in his lifetime. So just the amount of joy that he's feeling, his daughter who went to NC State is feeling, his granddaughter who's just in kindergarten but is still decked out in that pack red, it's infectious.
Yeah, that generational fandom is so exciting, and now they all get to share in this moment and pass that on. You did kind of touch on this. The saying from 1983 was, "Why not us?" I've seen it. Is that being picked up again, and is that the thought again? Why can't we do this?
It is, yeah. We've heard that from so many people, fans, not just after this most recent win, but really kind of through the later stages of the ACC tournament, and then building as we've moved through the NCAA tournament. The shirts from that ACC championship, the ones that we have seen a lot of kids, a lot of alums out here wearing today, they've got that "Why not us?" Phrase, that saying emblazoned right in the middle. So it's really something that people have embraced once again as NC State makes this really improbable run.
Pretty special, but also could be pretty costly if you're trying to head to either the men's or women's Final Four. 5 on Your Side found that the all-in with flights, lodging, and tickets could cost you just under $2,800 to watch the men take on Purdue on Saturday in Arizona, or more than $1,600 to see the women play South Carolina in Cleveland for Friday. But can you really put a price on being a part of history? I want to thank both Eric and Lewis for joining me today, and thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you listen to this podcast on WRAL.com or the WRAL News app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.